Sorry, guys. We're coming in with the wheels off tonight. It's totally my my bad. The I forgot Tyler was headed to England tomorrow for Thought Bubble, which is a convention that I love, but can't go to this year for all of the kind of crazy stuff I have to do. Hey, Ty, that's you, right?
That's me.
That's
It's
me.
not like a duplicate you.
What?
Yeah, that's me. That's not just like another you.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So I'm going to. What's the best way to let me do this in the chat? Or are you
Yep, setting that up right now just so everyone can talk.
um yeah, so sorry for the slightly chaotic um, uh, tone with all of it. But yeah, I really want to do this class. I'm very excited about momentism. For me, one of the ideas is here, I'll switch it so it's me or whatever. Let me pin myself there. Is that better? The one of the ideas is to try and focus on like the four or five things I think we're seeing in a lot of comics, like across the board, that are overperforming right now in a difficult market. Sorry, I'm in my kids' room, so forgive me for all the Legos and memorabilia behind me. But the idea is, I want to do like a series of classes with you guys, each of which focuses on like one technique. And all of the techniques or craft elements are things that I think are you can find in a lot of the kind of biggest books right now from all companies, from Marvel and IDW and Image and DC and Boom. But I mentioned this in that class I did on kind of five things to keep in mind. But as a refresher, in case anyone missed that one, it was sort of like a constellation of things that I think speak to a re-embrace of monthly comic priorities. Again, like so much of the storytelling that we've all been taking in over the last 10 years, when I think about like Stranger Things being starting almost 10 years ago and some of those first big streaming shows, like everything from, House of Cards and like all of those kind of very first streaming things to now. It's been 10 years. And we consume so much with streaming, but streaming has really different priorities, especially than monthly comics. Monthly comics are way similar to like the old network models, but it's even more vicious than that because when you have an old network model, you didn't pay every episode. You still just paid for the subscription to that channel, or you got that channel through your provider. With us, like you've got to re-up that subscription with every single issue. And so anyway, like I wanted to pick out these four or five things that I think are really essential to remember if you're doing monthly comics, and then do a kind of class on each one. I mentioned them in brief, or a bunch of things in brief in that class about the whole constellation of them. But I'd like to add a couple to them too, and then sort of just talk about them. So this first one will be momentism again, which is like really about how creating a moment in every issue or as many issues as you can is one of these key things that makes comics really enjoyable, monthly comics, because what it allows readers to do is then go talk about the issue and talk about that thing with their friends in a fun way. That's like, did you see that in that issue this week? Like, I can't believe that happened. And it can be an emotional moment. It can be a shocking gore moment. It can be a heroic moment. It can be a heartbreak. So we'll look at different kinds, but we'll talk about how to create one that's organic to your book. Batman like kicking the kid off the yacht. We try to give at least one or two kind of moments that you're going to talk about, I hope, with each issue of Absolute Batman. The next two have a lot, 14 and 15. So yeah, I'm excited for you guys to check those out. All right, so let me try and answer things that you guys want to ask now. And again, this is fun for me because it's my chance really to get to talk to you openly and just connect and get to answer kind of whatever really like whatever you guys want to ask with. I try not to be too filtered with any of it. But here, Let me pull up. Do you want to? Here, I can see the chat. Okay.
You can read them. I can feed you some, whatever you need.
Yeah, if you keep an eye on them while I'm talking and then see which ones you think are. I'm so jealous you're going to Thought Bubble, man. Thought Bubble is so awesome. It's one of the best cons ever. It's like,
It's so much fun, and like Lisa and Nabil and all of those people worked really hard to make it a great show.
yeah, Tula Lote is Lisa, so you know who we did Barnstormers together, and they did Somno with Becky. I'm just plugging in my computer with Becky Cloonan, and they started the convention, and they're just amazing. Okay, here's a good question. I see. Hi Scott, what is the best way to cold approach an editor you have no previous relationship with? I have a great pitch for the Spawn universe, and I want to approach the correct and professional way. Okay, so there's like two answers to this. The first one is if you have work under your belt, um, you here's okay. Let me back this up. For licensed work for Marvel, DC, like Image, if you're talking about GI Joe or whatever, you can't approach them about a pitch. Like you can't come to DC and say, "I have a Batman story." Legally, they're really not supposed to listen to that unless they ask you to pitch. So for creators like me, for example, like I have a lot of students or people that want to show me pitches for DC characters, but I'm not allowed to read those. So you can't really cold pitch an editor who's working at a company that's dealing with licensed characters. You can't really pitch them on those characters. What you can do is show them your work. And when you show them your work, you know, and you can express to them, I have a really big interest in this character in Spawn. And if they say to you, yeah, we'd love for you to pitch, then you pitch. But if you tell them an idea off the bat for that character, they're going to tell you they can't listen to it. Because again, there's all kinds of legal ramifications if a story like that pops up. So, and I like legally they cannot actually, I think, like take it from you also. So I wouldn't do that. Anyway, so as just kind of a first red line, don't do that. Because you're going to wind up wasting your time. But the second thing, if you're pitching your own work to an editor or you're pitching like a story that you have, whether it's like a pitch, because and the thing I'd say is if you're interested in pitching creator-owned companies, and you're not pitching for like James Bond or whatever, then what you want to do is look up their submission guidelines, make sure you really follow them because companies have very different ones. Some people like you to have art and like you to have an artist already attached, like Image, and have sample pages, and other places don't want you to have the book ready. They just want you to have a pitch and that's it, like what the book should be, and they want to find an artist with you and so on. So look up the submission guidelines. And then if you're really going to approach one of the editors though, at a con or any of that stuff, the key thing is to really know what they've done. Like look them up, make sure that you really, you know, like their work, and that you can speak to that. Again, like the real key to all of it, like to marketing your own stuff, to approaching people in the industry. I know it sounds really corny, but I believe in it. Like I believe in it pretty fervently, is sincerity. You know, I'll go out there and you'll see me talk forever about Absolute Batman, but I really don't try and say things that I don't feel strongly are true about the book or about certain issues and so on. Like I don't go out and talk about a small book or smaller book like Book of Evil or something like I did, which I adore that book, the same way I'm going to talk about Absolute Batman. I don't go out there and be like, this is the biggest thing and this is, because it's not. And your relationship with your readership and your fans has to stay as honest, you know, as you can possibly make it. So similarly with editors, what you want to do is cultivate a relationship that's sincere. So don't go to an editor you don't know or like what they do just because they're at a company you like. Really try and be like, listen, I really loved this book that you worked on. And you tend to work with people who I am really inspired by and who I think speak to the same kinds of sensibilities that I'm trying to approach in my work. And do that. Just be honest. You know, editors are really like generally, I got in trouble because I was saying the other day, I was like, editors are underpaid in this. And people were like, the companies were like, they're not always underpaid. And I was like, I'm sorry, they're not. I mean, wasn't trying to throw companies under the bus about them being underpaid, but I mean, editors largely are like, people that are really passionate about comics are really not given the credit they deserve. They don't get the glory, and they also don't get the hate, but they don't get they're unsung heroes. So I think they'll be really happy to hear from you if you're like, look, I'm working on this book. I'd really love for you to take a look if you can at some point. I'm a huge fan of what you do. These books really meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate the stuff you put into the world. So that's kind of how I would do it. Ty, is there one that you saw that you thought was really good out of all these? God, there are a lot. My God, there's a lot of people in this.
There was one, let me pull it up right now, who asked, given that drawing takes longer than writing, what is a typical profits right split on a indie book? Like, do artists get an advance of the normal page rate before profit splitting? I know it's a lot of details,
It
but he's
depends on
curious.
yeah, it just depends on the case. So like when I did Noctera, for example, with Tony, like Tony would he got his page rate before I got paid. Not because there was any kind of you're more important or you're this, but it was more like what he had going on in his life and the way that his life was structured. He needed more of a kind of regular monthly sort of regularized salary. Whereas for me, I could kind of back away and be like, if one issue was a special issue and did better, one issue does less, one issue, I can take this because when you do an indie book, or create your own book and you release it yourself at like a place like Image, what you make off of it is how it sells. So you don't get like a page rate the way you do if you do a book at Vertigo, right? So if you do a book at DC at Vertigo, they'll give you a page rate. You have like a very sort of a very standardized kind of income for the whole thing. And then if the book does well and hits a certain number, depending on what your deal is with them, you'll get royalties on the book. So you'll get, extra money there. If you're doing a create your own book at a place that's more DIY, like Image, they don't give you a page rate generally. What they can, like you can set up a deal with them to do that against your royalties. But really how you do is you make royalties off the book. And, in some cases, I don't know if it's exactly this way, but it used to be somewhere around like, you kind of wound up splitting $1 off the cover of every book that you sold once you got past about 3,000 or 4,000 copies. So if you sold 10,000 copies on an Image book, that meant you came home with like $6,000 or $7,000 for that issue to be able to split you and the artist or pay the artist, what they got. And so I've done books like that, like with Jock, where we were 50-50 and we just go down the middle. And then now we split differently. I mean, mostly because the lion's share of the work is the artists. You split it however you guys feel comfortable, but it really is kind of up to you. And again, like it's what I would say if you're looking to do a creator own book is to just be really open with those conversations, because it can get really harrowing at times. Like, you're in it together in the trenches for years on a book. Like, even if it's 6 issues, you're going to be working together for a year plus. So you want to make sure the person you're working with feels really good and happy and excited to go to work, and that you're really meeting them where they are. And if that means some people might be really happy to just be like, no, I'm just going to split 50-50 with you, and I don't need the money yet, so I can wait to see how the book does. So last thing I'll say about it, but just for people that are looking to understand, a page rate comes when you hand in the issue. Okay. So when you hand in the issue, you get page rate. Royalties come after the sales of the book. So well after that, after the book comes out, and usually a couple months after that. So the difference would be like if I have a book coming out, like Absolute Batman 14 comes out this month, right? I get paid a page rate as everybody does at DC. So when I handed in that script, I got paid. If it was an Image book, I wouldn't get paid. I'd get paid how it does, like I'd get paid off of the sales, not a page rate. So I'd do well off of that, but I wouldn't get paid for another few months after the book comes out. So I'd be paid in like February or something for the November issue. So you just have to know what's best for your life and what's best for your partner's life, I hope that's helpful. Is that helpful? You guys I'll be at the bottom so I can see what people are saying in the immediate. Okay. Here's one. Hello, Scott. You talked with Nick Dragata about the next 30 plus issues of Absolute Batman. Is this plan counting possible potential crossovers and events with Absolute Batman? How can you manage an unexpected idea? That's a great question. I mean, I adapt. Like American Vampire, I really thought was going to be about 30 issues, and it wound up being way more than that, probably double that total. And with Absolute Batman, like, but I knew the end of American Vampire. The ending is in the outline that I handed in at the when I pitched it. Similar with Absolute Batman, like we know where we're going and we know the final, like the big final chapter of it. But the things that sometimes get elastic are how long it takes to get there because you come up with stuff along the way. So right now our plan is to really be around, what we have planned is somewhere around 35, something like that, 35, 40 issues. But you just don't know. Like that's kind of where what we're thinking and it won't get shorter than that. It definitely might get longer than that. But that's I didn't have this much plan when I started Batman with Greg at all. So meaning it could wind up you know, being significantly longer, but it's really just me and Nick kind of figuring it out as we go. I mean, both of us really want to keep it as tight and as the same way I did with Batman or everything really I do. I don't I hate decompression. I really, and that's not to knock anybody that does long arcs or long decompressed storytelling. It's not my thing. I really enjoy like more of a kind of like pedal to the metal. Every issue is really packed kind of storytelling. It's just my taste, and Nick is the same. So we're just gonna keep it going as that way and the way we've been doing it and see how long it takes, I think. All right.
I
Ty,
have a
did you have
question.
one?
Yep. Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, asks, when creating American Vampire, did the story come to you in a cinematic form, or was it strictly prose in your head and you just hammered it out page by page?
No, it really was. It didn't wasn't cinematic. I mean, it really is more like, you got to think of it in the comic terms, just because they're such different medium. For me, it really is like American Vampire came from that idea. It came from an image. It was an image of Skinner at first that came to me after I saw this statue of a Confederate soldier that was a zombie in a little model store. And it got me thinking about like American history and mixing it with monsters. And I was like, well, what if there's a vampire in the Old West? And then it was sort of Skinner coming out of a coffin underwater in this Old West. And I was like, okay, that's where it comes from. And so it was really about kind of this idea that what if it was monsters had this whole genealogy that spanned all of American history and world history, and we could look at historical events or revisit them through this lens of like what's horrible and monstrous and heroic and all of these things mixed at once. So that's really where that came from, was more of a kind of an excitement around a concept and a character that would allow me to show this kind of arc throughout history of one character breaking good, of the villain, the bad guy kind of becoming the hero. That was the idea. Was starting from a dark place and hoping that you get better over time. Do you have another one, Ty?
Actually, I was just gonna ask, was American Vampire your first ongoing? I know you had to work with Marvel like around that time, but was American Vampire the first?
It was. That was my first ongoing. So I did the very first thing I ever wrote was the Human Torch one shot for Janine Schaefer over at Marvel at Timely. They did a Timely Comics thing with Scott Wagner, who does Atomic Robo. Was awesome, such a kind collaborator. And then the next thing I got after that was uh, Iron Man Noir, which was like a 4 issue series over there, which was really fun. And I really loved doing. And then after that, I got this little X-Men short, and then it was at that moment when they accepted American Vampire, and it became what was I going to do? Either stay over at DC at Marvel or go over to DC, and they both kind of offered me. They both were Marvel was offering me the Oz, like to work on the Oz book, one of the Oz books at that time with Scotty, I think. And then the other was DC was trying to figure out if I was going to do superheroes or not. But I was mostly just like at Vertigo with American Vampire, and I was just like DC felt like it had, at that time, Marvel had like a really deep bench also. They had a lot of like young, they had all the architects, which they were calling them at that time, like Matt Fraction and Jason Aaron and Rick Remender and Bendis and it was all those guys at once, Rucka and so DC was more open, you know. So there was more of a feeling of Jeff was there and he was kind of the big guy, and there were a lot of great writers, but it was just more of a wide field. It felt like. So that's kind of why I was like, and I loved Batman and was like, maybe one day I'll get to work on Batman. I didn't think it would be that quick. So that's kind of how that was my first stuff.
Well, actually, just got a great question. What are your classes like? Or I guess I can expand it. Like, what do you seek to achieve with your comic writing classes?
That's a great question. I mean, well, first, like I love doing it because it keeps me young. Like, for me, I love teaching. It really makes me revisit the craft and my priorities within that, I think, over and over. So, I can't sit there and be to you like, well, it's really important to tell a story that matters to you, or you've got to make sure you keep the emotional arc really present. So it's always about character. It's always about whatever the story is speaking to you about on an emotional level, and then go home and not do those things. It makes me feel hypocritical. So it is, in a selfish way, it keeps me connected to my principles as a writer. But in another way, it gives me a way of analyzing writing all the time and staying close to the ground, where, because the stuff I use for the class, it keeps me thinking, like momentism, right? So this class I want to do, it really makes me think about, like, does Transformers do this? Like, does Ninja Turtles do this right now? Does Beneath the Trees do this? Like, what element, or what about this technique is working at this moment? Why is it working? What is it? What makes it important? What makes it special to monthly comics? Because when you give people a moment, they can go talk to their friends about, and they have a place like the comic shop or online, but like a community place to go talk about this stuff. It hypes it up for the next month, right? Whereas when you can binge stuff, like, it doesn't, you don't need to do that because they're going straight to the next thing. So yes, you probably have a moment or two in the whole series, but you don't need to do it every episode. But with us, like, you do, and there are different kinds of them and they have different effects. So do you know what I mean? So it's all like that, where it's like, teaching keeps me, on the one hand, again, I think, like, keeps me connected to the things that are important on an idealistic level as a writer. And then it keeps me thinking about writing all the time in a broader, more analytical way that makes me, I think, a student. It makes me a student of the craft while I'm teaching. So I really enjoy that. I don't ever want to give it up. So yeah.
We have
What
a
else?
question from Crew Likes Comics, who asked, "How do you achieve creative fulfillment when writing a big character like Batman, and how do you do so when creating something new and personal?
Say that one more time.
How do you achieve creative fulfillment when you're writing a big uh, licensed character like Batman versus how you would do so with an independent, more personal, original character? Or is it pretty much the same?
It's pretty much like, how do I create an arc, you mean?
Or just like, how do you find fulfillment personally? Like, how do you find enjoyment writing these?
Oh, well, I mean, I love it. It's not really, I don't know, like, for me, it really is just sort of, there's no, like, do I enjoy one more than the other? They're just really different. Like, so, you know, the, for example, like, the difference is, like, when you work on something like Batman, you go into it knowing that, like, everybody knows about this character more, as much or more than you that's reading the book. And so the job is kind of to prove that you have something to say through this character, that you love this character, and that you have a story that's going to be compelling because you see what they're about and what they can do and how they can make you brave, right? And then when you're doing your own stuff, nobody knows what it is, only you do. So you're selling them on all the things that you created and imagined. They're probably giving it a chance, maybe because you sold them on the high concept, but it could be just as likely that they're coming to it because they heard things about you as a creator. So it's almost the inverse. Like, one is almost the reverse of the other, where they're coming to license stuff with this whole, pre kind of preconception of what they expect. Whereas when they come to your stuff, they don't have any at all. So you're sort of selling one versus the other. But I enjoy them both equally. I mean, I'm never like, I love making my own stuff and I love the freedom of that. And there's a simplicity and a kind of just this like energy to it that's really special. But there's also like, it's a different energy, but the energy of doing something on a character like Batman, who means so much to me and has always meant a ton to me and means so much to like millions and millions of people, is an electrifying feeling as well. It's a real honor to get to shepherd these characters. That's why I, consulting for DC and teaching about them, I take it really seriously. I'm a middle-aged dude, but like, I love Batman and it matters to me. He matters to me, and it matters to me that you write stories with him that, you care about. That's it. I don't take it lightly, and I don't think anybody should take it lightly, because it's a real, these characters, I don't know, you go to enough conventions and you meet enough fans who speak to you about the things that these characters have gotten them through in life. And you think of that whatever you want, but I think it's amazing. But like, Batman and Batman stories have helped people through some of the darkest times in their lives because he's a character that's designed to make you face the things you're afraid of and get up. And there's some stories that have helped me through intensely bad periods, both as an adult and as a kid. And so I see it as something that's like, this incredible, incredible honor. So I really dislike the feeling of, if people who, when you read something and it feels like people are writing superheroes as a job, because it doesn't, that's not the way it should be, to me.
Or we have a choice for you. We have one from the chat here and one from the Discord server. Your pick.
Let's try Discord for once. Let's do that.
So we have a question from Scott XPR Rolls. Given everything you've got going on these days, how has your writing process changed over time as you've taken on additional responsibilities? Like, do you block certain days off of the week, certain hours of the day? Do you have daily writing goals?
I definitely have daily writing goals, and I do have hour. Like I used to be before I had kids. I mean, I broke whenever. Before I had kids, I was broke, and I was broke when we had our first kid, and I was working, I was teaching high school, and I was doing tutoring and all that. So I wrote whenever I could. But once we had kids and I got a regular job at DC, it really just became a live or die. You've got to write while the kids are out, like asleep or at school. So my work life is super boring in my hours. Like I take the kids to school generally, or my wife does, but usually me because of her hours. And then I get back here at 8:30, as Ty knows, and I start working. Like I'm working from like usually 8 to 3, 8:30 to 3. Sometimes I procrastinate, I can be lazy, but like that's my work time. And then usually on most days we have her mom or somebody's helping us for another couple hours till about 5. So either I get them from school or she gets them from school, and then I work for another couple hours, and then I try and really be done. Unless like tonight, my older boys are they're at the Knicks game. Unfortunately, the Knicks are sucking tonight, I think, unless somebody sees that they made an amazing comeback in the fourth quarter. But it was really sweet. My older son took our 18-year-old took our 14-year-old to the game. So I'm in his room, and our 6-year-old Quinn is fast asleep. So I'm not shirking on my dad responsibilities. That's why. But I'm usually with them, at night. And then if I really need to work, I'll wait till everybody's asleep again at 11 and then work from like 11 to 12 or 11 to 1, which I've been doing way too much lately. Like I said, I had a health scare a couple weeks ago, which turned out to be nothing, but I just had some pretty bad chest pains all of a sudden in the morning one day. And then my wife, being a doctor, was like, "You're going straight to the ER." And I did. And then it just triggered having like a million tests all week, and staying in there and being there for like 12 hours and everything, and multiple days. But it turned out it looks like it was just muscular. There's nothing there. It was just like an old weightlifting injury from back when I actually lifted weights a lot more. So anyway, the point is, right now, the last couple weeks have been really rough, where like I'm up super late, I have a lot of deadlines, and I feel badly, but like I just got to get through it. You got to just push. Like that's the biggest thing about writing is that, what I try and tell people is like the best advice I can give about beyond like the obvious stuff. The obvious stuff is you've got to be working on your own favorite story, right? Like you've got to be making something you'd love to pick up and read. And it has to be exciting to you. You got to be an exciting writer to yourself, like those basics. But in terms of like the pragmatic advice, it's that like I've been to a lot of writing classes and a lot of writing schools. Like I don't, no one in my family, everyone in my family was in sciences and that stuff. My dad was in the Air Force and then became a doctor, and my mother's an optometrist. They're both retired, but like my sister is a physical therapist. Like I'm the black sheep, right? Nobody went into the arts. So I didn't know how to become a writer at all. Like, and there was no internet back then. And so I just took, I read every book I could. I took Gotham writers classes in New York City. If you grew up there at all, they used to have, I think I don't know if they still have them, but they had those things on the corner with the little newspapers for Gotham Writers Workshop. Took summer classes when I could, when we could pay for it, all that. So, for me, I think the biggest thing I can tell you is like, you've gotta do it even when you do not feel like it all the time. Like meaning it has to be the secret thing. It's your actual real job, no matter what you have in your life. That doesn't mean you have to spend 8 hours a day doing it. But the best thing I can tell you is like the biggest killer, having gone to a lot of writing schools, I met a lot of talented people and a lot of talented people who did not make it as writers, and a lot of people who I did not think had, including myself, had like an innate ability at it or were immediately really good at it or you knew were going to make it, who wound up doing phenomenally because of perseverance. So it really is like, I like to try and demystify it and be like, it's not that different than most trades. It's not like, professional sports or something where you need some incredible natural talent in addition to all like huge training and all this. I feel like to do it within a level of competence where you can do it for a job of some kind, you really can learn it. Or are you going to be like, Grant Morrison or whatever? No, probably not, but maybe you can be. I'm just saying the point is like if I wanted to be a lawyer and it's all I ever wanted to be, I could probably be a lawyer. I might not be the most amazing lawyer, but I'd be happy if that's all I wanted to be was that, and I could do it. And that's the way I see writing. So the best advice again is like, it's the people that don't make it or the people that wait for like inspiration or like let other things get in the way to the degree that they never do it. Even if you can only do it for an hour a day or an hour every couple days, you just got to stick to that schedule and be like, I'm doing it for this time, and that is it. I'm doing it for this time, and that is it. So that's the best advice I can give with that.
We have a question from the chat asking if you can share any details about the collaboration between you and Kelly Thompson for the crossover that's coming up between Batman and Wonder Woman. How did it come to fruition? How did you work together to ensure that the characters stayed true to their respective stories?
I love Kelly, first of all. I got to say, like, that book is just criminally good. And I love Hayden, obviously, too. But the way it worked was we tried really hard to come up with something that we felt was two issues, like part one, part two. And then we did come up with something. And then we sort of felt like, are we really going to do this way? Where what if they read Batman, they don't read Wonder Woman? Or what if they read Wonder Woman, they don't want to read Batman? Are we going to force them to read both books? And then is it going to cliffhang in one and you've got to read the other? And I mean, like, I know that's the conventional wisdom, and that's probably what maybe we should have done in terms of like sales, that may force you to buy both books. But ultimately, what we did was we were like, this story is actually kind of two stories, and like one of them is a little bit more about Bruce, and one of them is a little bit more about Diana. So why don't we do them in succession and do like Diana comes to Gotham because of something that happens that she really needs to figure out, and she encounters Bruce, and that's their first meeting. And then after that encounter, something happens that Bruce decides he really needs Diana's help. And then he goes to Gateway City. So she gets to come to Gotham in her issue, and we get to go to Gateway City, which Nick is excited to draw a road trip. Also, he's doing it right now, actually. He already did that part. It's awesome. To go to Gateway City to get help. And I've said it before, so I'll say the big crux of that issue for us is him discovering really that if she is who she says she is, if she's attached to the supernatural realm, And, you know, Greek mythology has all these half animal, half man things. Is there some way that she knows someone or anything that can help him, um, help Waylon stop this transformation that's continually getting worse into Croc? So that's kind of our, so that's how we did it. And then what we really did was just kind of give each other the room to tell the best story possible. Like we talked it through. She saw our outline, and Nick is co-writing it this one too because he really had ideas he really wanted to do with it too. So I'm really excited because they're awesome. He's a tremendous writer. And then for us, like I looked it over with Kelly. I gave some suggestions when she sent it for our Batman stuff, but she already had it. It was awesome. And so yeah, where we landed was it's like two parts where you can read them together, and one leads to the other, and this one reflects this one, and they really go together well. And they build on each other, and it's like a two-parter. But you could also read, and now don't do this, but I'm just saying, you could read Wonder Woman and not Batman, or you could read Batman and not Wonder Woman and understand. Like, so I try to be really careful with that. Like KO, right? Like KO, you could read the 5 issues and nothing else. Or you could read the 5 issues and Aquaman and Superman and Justice League and the tie-in with Annabelle and Vampirella and Sam Strong, and like you could read everything if you want. But I really dislike forcing people to read stuff. I just try to be really, I try to be really aware of how fucking expensive comics are, honestly. I hate how expensive they are, is really what it is. So, it's one of the reasons I was so invested in trying to do stuff digitally. And I still believe in that. But I had a different point of view of it, I think, at the time where I felt like it was expanding in a different way than it wound up expanding right then. But I did it because I believe in the idea of having an on-ramp for readers that, young readers especially, but readers where you don't have to pay $4 or $5 every single issue, but you have browsability. You have a way of going online and reading the stuff and not owning it, but reading it, so that you can get into it the way so much manga does that, or you get a subscription and you can just browse so much material. So anyway, the point is like, that's the way I wanted to do the Batman, Wonder Woman, and Kelly agreed. Kelly had the same feeling, which is like, let's do stuff that's special together, but also special to our series individually.
And we've actually got a somewhat related question. How is the coordination for All In and Absolute lines changed from what has gone on before during your many years at DC?
It's totally different. Like, how to like get into this? Like DC, it's just been a really, when I was there, I sort of see DC in two parts for me, right? I see it as like the first 10 years I was there, and then I took a break I didn't realize it was this long, but it was like 4 years. And then this period. So I took a break from like 2020 to 2024 in terms of being on the stands and that stuff with DC and being really involved, right? In that first 10 years, there was awesome stuff about it. I love working with Greg. I loved the friendships I made, all that. But it was a really chaotic time. There were big personalities there. But on top of that, it was a lot of it was just like huge changes in comics. Like DC got acquired by Warner Brothers, got moved to Burbank. Then that got acquired by AT&T, and then that got acquired by Discovery Plus, and like on and on and on. And streaming and all this stuff happened. And the movies, like you got to think about that. When I started in comics in 2008, 2009, the movies were just ramping up. There was not, like, the Marvel Universe was just getting rolling. So that interest and the entire geekification of like everything was huge too. TV shows, everything. So there's if you think about that as like an ecosystem where originally DC Comics and Marvel were just comic companies, but now are part of these much larger entities. There's just a lot of change. There's a lot of people moving around in the company. There's a lot of, again, reacquisition, which means you have new bosses all of a sudden. It means a lot of people are getting shifted around. It means a lot of people that have ambitions to go from comics to this are doing that and then can't do what they were doing. And it's just really chaotic. And, that meant there were opportunities in some ways, like at least for comics. I didn't have any ambition for TV or film or any of that. But it also just meant that there wasn't a lot of ways that you could plan, because some of which was personality stuff and some of which was just actual just, the mechanics of the fact that everything was changing all the time like that. So you couldn't really look and say we're doing a plan for 3 years. You couldn't even look and say we're doing a plan for a year and a half. It was always just like, I just had to be like, we were doing this story in Batman now, and I want to do this story next, but hopefully I'll be able to, and that's it. You couldn't be like, hey, everybody at the whole company, we're going to do an event in 2 years or a year and a half that's going to do this, so you all have time to plan. It just didn't work that way. Whereas now with All In, when I came in and agreed to consult with DC with Josh back in 23, 22, 23, when I was talking about it with them, the whole stipulation was like, this has to be something where we can plan way ahead and really have a roadmap that allows people to have these touch points as creators where they know they'll have this much time on a book unless the sales really just tank or whatever, or they'll have these opportunities at this year point to change the book up, to bring new elements in, to switch books if they want, but to always give almost a year in advance of like of notice. And we'll have like one big meta story that runs for a few years. So All In is one big story, right? It's like All In is the first part, KO is the second part, and there's a third part that's planned. That's this big kind of culmination of all of it. And that'll bring in a lot of stuff that we've been building as well. So for me, like that, it gives us this incredible blueprint that allows us to all know what's coming and then adjust to that and use and take advantage of that. So like, for example, if somebody's like not happy on a series they're working on, or they're happy, but they feel like it really needs a change, they can look ahead and say, oh, well, in March when KO is over, and they would have known March is when KO is over for the last year, since March of last year, really, or summer actually was when we did this big summit. So they would know for almost a year that they have that point coming when they can change directions in their story, when the event can give them elements that could add things if they want. It's sort of like Magic Clay, where I can be like, oh, do you need something from the event? Do you need a character to appear or come back to life or whatever? All that. So it can give them what they need as a story engine. And so the planning for me is a real joy. Part of it is like, I don't think I really reacted well a lot of the time to that kind of chaos. I'm a really very stubborn person about when I think there's a story I really want to do and I really want to do it a certain way, and my team, like team of people I'm with, believe in it. And I can be pretty, I used to have a reputation when I started as a pretty big hothead, I think, internally, just in terms of yelling at like bosses, fighting with the bosses a lot about when things they tried to say we could do something and then change it at the last minute and that. And it wasn't particularly healthy for me. And so I think, as time went on, it became more diplomatic about it. I think part of it when I started was probably me trying to get fired because I was so nervous being on Batman so early. But ultimately, like what it is now is I feel like I'm at a place where I really take pride in being a small part in the climate and the culture at DC right now, which I think is really something to be proud of, where we really do communicate editorial and creators a lot more. We have a plan that we're really open about in general. We try really hard to check in with people, make sure they're happy. And we're really trying our best to just kind of be creator forward. All these next level books for us, for example, are generally books we went to creators and we're like, what do you want to do? And somebody pitched the Demon, and somebody pitched Deathstroke, and somebody pitched, and as long as we were like, they have to be really the big tenets of next level were like, it's got to be a bold swing. It doesn't have to, it can't change the character. Like it has to be, who they are, but it has to be a big story that will be the best story that, we've had from them in a long time. And it's got to be really user friendly. It can't be like you can't play it so that people have had to read something or know anything about the character before they pick up the book. So it's got to read like a number one, like you made this character up. So everyone, that was it. And then, we're just really proud that we have that in the core line, the continuing books. We've got really cool stuff coming. And then, we also have some new Absolute books, and we're building to this third part of the story down the line too, but we have plenty of time in between KO and that to like let some of this stuff blossom. So I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of being a part of DC right now. So I'm very grateful to them for welcoming me in and allowing me to be a creative voice there right now.
We'll have unfortunately this might have to be the final question, but it's a
I can
good
do
one
a little
though.
more. I'll do a
All
little
right, we'll
more.
do a couple more. We have
I
one from
talk so much, I don't
Olympian.
get to that, man. I
I
feel
would
bad.
never want to cut you off. I would never do that ever. But we have a question from Olympian Germ in the chat who asked, "Who's a writer that you admire that you'd love to do a book with, special in the Absolute Universe, or even just wanted to shed a spotlight on?"
I mean, I'm trying to get Garth. I want to get Garth Ennis to do a book. Garth, if you're out there, I've already talked to Garth, but I'd love Garth to do any book in the whole DCU. He's somebody who's like a white whale. There's a lot of people out there that I'd love to bring over. Some of them are at Marvel, for a while, artists too. But let me think. I mean, they're the obvious ones. Like I'm really excited Grant's coming to do stuff. He's my gold standard. They're my gold standard. And I'd love to, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel bad because every time if I say it, it gets like it becomes a news story of trying to get that person. So I don't want to, I don't want to do that and create gossip. But there's a lot of people I'd love to work with. It's a
Let
good
us know in the
time.
comments. Let us know who you want to bring to DC.
Yeah, put it in the chat, and I'll be like, yeah.
We have a question from Nicole who asks, "Are there any things to keep in mind as a female writer trying to break in? It feels like this is a very male-dominated industry still."
It is. It is a male-dominated industry, and that's unfortunate. Like we are trying hard to change that. I think again, like there's a misconception in comics. Like, I think especially a few years ago when there was more of a culture war happening openly online about it, that to me is, was always a lot of like online stuff. But I think there was an argument that there's sometimes you'll see a really ugly argument rise, which is sort of like, you know, everything is there's so many women and people of color in comics and this and this and this, and it's infuriating as somebody who worked on at the DC Writers Workshop and for years, and which was devoted to trying to bring in more voices, more diversity to comics. And again, it was tough because DC was such a churn that a lot of the time we do the classes and then there weren't places for people on the other side, which was frustrating. So there was a lot of, I'm very proud of what we did and really grateful to Bobby and Sarah and the people that worked on that, Andrea. But also, I think we all shared in some of the frustration of like the practicalities of it. But that said, you'd see people reacting to people from different backgrounds coming into the industry and being like, "Oh, everything, there's so much diversity and this and that," which is, an ugly comment to begin with. But then secondarily, you'd be like, actually, why don't you take a look at the line? Like, people were making these arguments at a moment, even pretty recently, where you look and it was like the vast majority of books are handled by very established writers who are generally male, generally white, and that's just the way it is. Like if you look at it now, and that's unfortunate. I think we need more. Again, I'm not knocking everybody that anyone in that category that writes, because again, like there are tons of my favorite writers who are fall into that category too. But I'm just saying the industry would be healthier, in my opinion, if we had more voices in it. And I really am hoping that we can affect that at DC. So, and in general. So I'm trying to be supportive and also know that we have a really long way to go, I think, in general. But we definitely need female writers. We really need writers from all backgrounds. And I think that's something that people in the industry are very aware of and very really trying hard. I know there are editors that really care deeply at DC about trying to really broaden the bench of creators in general. So yeah, I hope you don't lose hope.
We have a question asking about if you have any plans to write Superman again. And I guess I'd have to ask, is there any event that's happening right now that focuses on Superman?
Yeah, Superman secretly, I mean, he's the main character of KO. So like I thought about it. It's like metal was Batman, death metal was Wonder Woman, and this event is a Superman one for me. So it's kind of dark though. I mean, it's a little bit like I'm a little nervous. I just finished one of the issues of it that I'm like, because it's not that I'm taking a dark view of Superman, but I really want to push him, because one of the things I feel like in this moment is like everybody wants, I mean, things are so scary, right? Where you feel like just you're at a moment where I'm sure people have felt like this many times, but in history, but it feels like there's this real boiling point, right? Where people feel at the mercy of all kinds of things, like rich and powerful people that seem to control all the levers of power, but also people feel helpless. They feel like there are all these systemic problems that are too big, climate change and economic disparity, and just like many, many things that feel like icebergs that you're never going to be able to do anything about. And like imagine Superman being able to fix all of it and cure cancer and all of this. And the more the moment becomes like acutely frightening and difficult and challenging and bad, I think the more people would be eager for him to take over and like do the right thing, where corrupt government, clean it, like all this stuff, get rid of all of it. And so this argument that like maybe things have changed with Darkseid coming, and the way to fight him is to become that thing you're afraid of becoming, which is this good celestial god kind of being that the whole universe bends towards. Why not, So to me it's a really resonant story, even though it's also like Joker turning 200 feet tall and like eating people because he has the Adam's belt, and and like and all kinds of fun stuff I don't want to spoil. So that's kind of what it is. So it is a Superman story deep down in this one.
I also have a question about Absolute Batman. Someone asked, multiple people actually asked, is Absolute Batman a book that you could see at some point being handled by other writers, other artists, other creative teams?
I'm always okay with that. Like it's hard for me to imagine right now because we're just making it, like there's so much that's still unwritten. Like I know what's coming. Like I know I don't want to spoil stuff, but like, I know a lot of the characters you're thinking of, we've thought of like where they're gonna land, from Dick Grayson to Jason Todd and others. So they're all, and it's relatively soon too, like within the year. A lot of them will, not this year, but early, because it's already November. But like early in 26, you'll start to see a lot of these characters appear, mostly because the stuff that Batman has to deal with brings in more of the city. And so you'll see them start to circulate in the story, and then become bigger figures. And there's some really big stuff coming. I mean, each issue, I really, again, like I really love keeping the pedal down. So for me, it's like 14 is the big finale with Bane, which I really hope you guys love. It's way bigger. It's like 27 pages or something crazy. 15 is the Joker issue, which it's Alfred telling Bruce all about him. So we learn what Alfred knows about him. 16 is the Wonder Woman story, which is a really fun one and a big one. 17 is Ivy, brings Poison Ivy in. And then there's also a big surprise in 17 that I know will make people angry, but I'm really excited about. And that's two parts, 17 and 18. And then 19 begins our big arc with Nick again, that brings in a lot of the characters we've been talking about in different ways without spoiling too much. So that one is that's a big epic that goes from like 19 to 25. So that'll be fun too. Big Harley plays a really big part in that too. So anyway, that's kind of the plan, such as it is. Um, Wait, what was the question again? I feel bad. I totally forgot while I was talking about it.
It was just asking about leaving Absolute Batman to other
Oh,
creative
yeah,
teams.
sorry. It was like the point is like once, like there's just so much like we want to make that, it's our version of it. And if somebody wanted to take it after we're done, I'd be happy with that. I don't mind like when people take the Court of Owls or any of that and use it. It makes me happy that people still are interested. So no, I'd be thrilled if somebody wanted to do Absolute Batman after us, but it's hard to imagine it right now because we're still creating all of it, you know?
Actually, a question about you mentioned people making people angry at times when you're writing a book like Batman. Like you had Jim Gordon as Batman. You've done things with characters people have had arguments about.
Yeah.
Is there something to you about the balance between giving people what they expect and giving people what they aren't expecting?
Yeah, there is. That's a great question. I mean, like how to how to think about that. Like the way that I do it is really like I know what I'm gonna do. Like I have a story or an idea I need to do. I love it and I want to do it and I'm going to do it. Like so I that's where it begins, right? So like Absolute Batman, I know what it is. I know who he is. I know how his parents die. All that's in the outline, like that's coming, you know, before we do issue one. But then so I don't think about like expectation. Like I don't think about I don't do I never come up with something because I'm thinking about what anyone else wants or what anyone else, expects. Um I'll do that as a consultant. Like as a consultant, what I do for DC is like, hey, we really need a crime book. We don't have a crime book. Do we have a character that fits that? And then, you think of what character could fit that, and then you see if anyone is interested in pitching or has a pitch that they love that takes that character. So I think of it in those terms, but when it comes to my own stuff, like, no, I don't do that. I just like, what is the story I really want to tell and need to tell, right? But then after I decide that, then I do think a lot about what the expectations are. And people can do this or not. Like my argument is I did a class on this, I think. I think I talked about it called triangulation. I don't know if I
Yep.
did a whole class on it. But James and I talk about it all the time, tying in. Like James is better, even better than it by far, I think, than I am at this point. But we sort of did it together over the years when he was coming up and I was coming up, which was it's this belief that like comic creators, they always say you have to be one of two of three things. This was the old saying when I started. You have to be good, fast, or nice. If you were nice and good, you'd get work. If you were fast and good, but not necessarily nice, but not an asshole, but you'd get work. But if you were one of the three, that wasn't enough. But James and I always thought there was a fourth thing, right? Which is triangulation, which was the ability to understand how the story you want to do fits into the current zeitgeist and market, right? So when I do Absolute Batman, I do think about after I know the story, then I think about, well, where is Batman right now for you guys, like the fans? How are you going to react to this pitch, like to the symbol, to all of it? And I try really hard, and I talk to retailers and try and think of what is the what is the reaction going to be, not like as a fan, like as a Batman, how would I feel about this if I didn't know it? And then I try and mitigate that or try and speak to you in some way, whether it's through marketing, or interviews or little gestures in the book sometimes. Like when we did Jim Gordon as Batman, I knew people were going to hate it so much from the idea that it needed me to like address that in some way. So it opens with Jim Gordon looking at the camera and after giving this thing about he's going to be Batman, saying like this is the stupidest idea in the history of Gotham City. Like where's my damn Batmobile? Um, to try and say to you, I know, like I'm with you. I'm a fan too. I get that this is a scary idea, or this is an unsettling idea, or this is an annoying idea, it seems, or whatever. But just trust me because I'm thinking the same way you are. Like I love the character the same way. I've thought about, what other versions you have right now. I've thought about like if I was doing Spider-Man right now, if I was hired right now, I would be very aware of like Ultimate Spider-Man's success and some of the arguments about how Spider-Man has been over the last couple years, fair or unfair. Like I'd be aware of that, and I'd come into it again with the story that I want to tell, no matter what. I wouldn't. That might be a story I know that doesn't fit that. It doesn't matter to me. I'm still gonna do it the same way. Um, like American Vampire was coming out at a time when Twilight was huge, and everyone was like, "You can't do vampires," but it's not. I don't care. It's like I want to do that story. But once I get it through, then I think about how to market it away from that, or how do I address the fact that? So similarly, like that's what I would say is it's a really important, in my opinion, skill set to develop. Um, Not everybody agrees with me. I mean, some people really feel like, you just do the book, you don't worry about any of that stuff and that. But the way I am, like I still like absolutely agree. Like you do the book no matter what, the way you want to do it. You do not compromise it. But you do think about, for me, once you have it, you think about how to best communicate what it's about and why people should pick it up, and you be aware of where they are in their lives with the character that you're working on and with comics in general. So that's kind of what I mean. Do you know what I mean? So that's how I think about expectation. And I talk to retail. So like when I want to do something like KO, I'll give you an example, right? Like I'm like, you know what? I want to do this story about Superman right now. And I think I have a way of doing it that would just be like over the top, bombastic fun, which is what it feels like I would want right now as a comic reader in really fucked up, difficult times economically and all of this. I would want like Saturday morning cartoon. But beneath nine layers of candy is like a pretty heartfelt, resonant story for me. Okay, I think about that, and then I'm like, I go to, and I have the story and I know we're going to do it. And then I go to retailers and I'm like, look, my feeling is like right now people are ready for that kind of like ding ding WWE, UFC, like nonstop, just knock down, drag out, fight thing. What do you guys think? And they'll be like, yeah, I think actually that's what they want. What if we did a bracket? And like, let's do a bracket. So that's what I'm saying is like, it's a second part of your brain that's more about the triangulation and the business aspect of how to, not how to sell it even, but how to communicate it to readers. Like this is why I love this and what I'm doing, and don't be resistant. Try and give it a chance. Couple more? What do you think?
Speaking of retailers, we have a retailer question from the great writer, editor, and founder of Wink, Regine Sawyer, who asks, I have a printing question. Is Absolute Batman Annual going to be reprinted? My local comic shop sold out, and I'm buying more books to inspire me to write more often.
I think so. It sold really well. It sold, I was way excited. It sold, like I don't know. I mean, it sounded like it was going to sell out, so I think they'll probably reprint it. My guess is we'll hear about that, but they have not told me that, so I don't want to go out and say it's sold out. But my my suspicion is that it will or has.
Well, can you talk more about the annual? I know that everyone's talking about like certain stories from that annual online, and I would just love to hear the behind the scenes stories of how that came together.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it really was like Nick and I thought about doing an annual ourselves, and then we're like, there's just no way in hell we can do one. We're busy on the series. And Nick came up with the idea of like, well, what if we go to some of our favorite creators who write and draw and just like let them play in our world? And I was like, that's great, that's brilliant, let's do it. And so Dan was a friend of Nick is friends with him, I'm friends with them. Ironically, he's actually the person when I was looking for somebody to do Absolute Batman before I thought I would do it. I don't know if I've said this before, but Dan was probably I think the first person I went to be like, do you want to write and draw it yourself? Like, and he immediately, before we even got into what it was, beyond that, he couldn't because he already had Transformers, which wasn't announced yet, but he told me he had this amazing gig. So, funny enough, like, we go all the way back on Absolute Batman. But I love Dan. I love his work. I've loved him, from Murder Falcon to Do a Power Bomb, everything. And so you're like, yeah, whatever you want to do. And then he came in and he pitched his story, which he was like, I live in Chicago. I feel really frustrated by what's going on. I really want to do something that's about Bruce not knowing how to react, but just attacking and being violent and trying to, grow from that afterwards. And we are like, go for it. And, I thought what he did was terrific, artistically, and I thought it was really heartfelt. And that's what we're looking for, is like passionate stories. And then James is a friend who I met him last year in Italy when we did a con together, me, him, and Nick in Naples, and just such a sweet guy. And I loved his work forever. I love Ultra Mega, and I'm a big fan of his going all the way back. And we went to him and we're like, look, we'd love for you to be a part, and he jumped at it, and he had a great story too. And then Meredith, uh, Nick knows, and had a completely different style and wanted to do something really short and punchy. And we were like, great. So the annual for us was to give us a chance. Like we're so our vision for this character is so like maniacally ours. Like, I mean, I think about this book all the time. Like, I mean, Tyler will vouch for me, but like, I'm obsessed with the book. Nick's obsessed with the book. I love writing it. He loves drawing it. Like, you know, it's like it was when I was on Batman with Greg too. It's just like sometimes you're just in a zone, and it just is the best feeling where you're like, this is ours. Like, this is, everything we want to do. Um, and so one of the fun things about the annual is like giving other people a chance to play in that sandbox and make it theirs and have fun with it and own it. So that was the joy of that. We want to do it again next year with another annual that way. So it was a real pleasure. And I'm very grateful to Dan and James and Meredith for doing it.
Can you also let us know what made you decide to make Bruce such a foul-mouthed shit talker?
Because he's like a bastard. I kind of love him. Like he's interesting to me because he's like I always think about how he'd get along with mainline Bruce, and sometimes I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like, you know, they'd hate each other at first, and other times I feel like they'd get along okay, and then sometimes I feel like no, they'd fight. But for me, he's just such a burned down like absolute version of him where his idealism has been like burned, like just into him, like just his mother is an activist, his father is a teacher. He's had this trauma that just like should have broken him and instead made him only more determined. And he has like love in his life with his mom, who's also like a moral compass. And he's just kind of like he's so uncompromising, just morally. He puts them. He doesn't have the same kind of obsession. It's different for me than Bruce because he still has his mother and his friends here, but he's almost more of a maniac in his way with his ideals. Do you know what I mean? He's less methodical and less strategic and more this like beast of nature of passion and emotion and idealism and just like he just comes right at you. That's it. There's not a lot of like tremendous strategy, which I love about him, because it's just different. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I love writing him in that regard, he's so much fun for me because he's just so different, yeah. Did that answer that, Ty?
I think so.
What was the exact question again?
What made you make Bruce such a foul-mouthed shit
Oh
talker?
yeah. Right. Well, that's the thing. So he's also like he's just rough around the edges, you know what I mean? Which I like. Like he hasn't perfected his whole theatrical thing. Bruce, when you write Bruce unless you're writing Bruce year one. I mean, when I did Bruce as a young guy in Zero Year, he gave the finger and he was more rough and foul-mouthed back then too. I like that he becomes more refined. I think our Bruce would become more roughneck as he goes. I don't think he's gonna mellow out. I think he gets even more like out there, which I know he does, so that's fun.
I actually have one important final question. What legacy would you want the Absolute Universe to leave?
And that's a great question. And are you guys having fun? Was this okay for everybody? I didn't expect so many people on such short notice, but I really appreciate it. Um, and what was the idea for Harley? Harley, there's a lot of ideas for Harley. Harley is gonna be a consistent player in the stories from here forward. But we also have an issue about Harley coming in the spring that shows like how she kind of came to be who she is, and she's got a really big sort of twist and part of the plot coming later. So you'll see Harley is fun. So anyway, the what is the legacy of the absolute universe? I mean, ultimately, like what I would love it to be is that what it reminds people of, I hope, is that these characters exist to be renewed. You can burn them down to their core and like look at the things that they stand for, and those things, I think are almost eternally enduring in American culture and in culture in general, global culture, and human nature. Like they're different from one another though, right? Like Superman to me is this incredible godlike being who looks at us and says, "I believe in you." Like I'm inspired by you, by people like you, Ma and Pa Kent and Lois. And there's tremendous power in that. And there's a restraint to Superman, right? And then with Wonder Woman is like a leader. I think Wonder Woman leads by example and is kind of like, let me show you to your best angels this way. And Batman is different. To me, Batman doesn't think about his influence so much. He's more of like, he just does the thing. He does it himself for himself because it's the right thing. And whether it's absolute or it's not. And his lesson is, I'm going to show you how, even if I don't mean to, it's not, I'm trying to show you, but I'm going to take this trauma in my life and I'm going to use it as fuel to win, to make the world better. That's how I win. And that lesson is all there is to Batman, like at core, right? And if you take it down to that, you can change everything else. You can make him poor or rich. You can make him, you know, he can grow up here, he can grow up there, he can be in the past and history, he can be in the future. Grant said he's the most adaptable character, he thinks, but ultimately, like what I'm getting at is that the characters really are primal constructions when you look at them. It's why they endure for century, or whatever. So I hope what the Absolute Universe and its success shows is that you shouldn't be afraid to make these characters mean something to you right now. And that might mean changing some things while still staying true to the DNA, of who they are. Because to me, that's how ultimately, I keep saying that, maybe I have the ultimate universe on the brain. It's maybe, I think, to me, at the end of the day, like, that's how they live on. And that's where you get Dark Knight Returns and you get, um, you know, uh, uh, like so many of the seminal stories, whether it's what you got in Swamp Thing with, Anatomy Lesson and all of that, or you get with like Superior Spider-Man, which is one of my favorites as well, to John's Avengers, all of it, like, and all these amazing classic Days of Future Past, like all these things bent the characters in ways that you were like, is this gonna, but they don't break because it's, if you stay true to who they are at core, in their kind of diamond essence, in that way at the base, then you can kind of take them to a lot of places that you don't expect. So that's what I hope it is. I hope it inspires creators out there to be like, I want to do superheroes and I want to tell my stories with them, even if those stories are surprising and unexpected, or especially if they are.
And I think that's it for now.
All right, that was really fun. I thought I was only going to do 45 minutes, but then I just keep talking, so it's good. I really appreciate everybody doing this, and let's do it. This is fun. We should do it more often. I feel like I don't do it enough, but it's mostly because I'm so underwater with work. I feel bad if my editors are on this thing, but I got my work done today. But I'm again like this stuff. One lesson, like you got to hit your deadlines. That's it. Even if it means staying up all night. Even at my age, you got to do it.
And we'll be back in like, was it 2 weeks? I think we said was going to be the moment in comics class.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Well, when you're back from England, so
Sorry to deprive you guys of classes. I got to go to England.
it's gonna be fun. Say hi to Jock. Give him a big hug for me.
I always do.
All right. See you guys later.